Well, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome back to the second day of our seminar. I have to say before we start, I think we now officially have the youngest ever participant in an EIP-AGRI seminar. She's disappeared from my screen now, but Victor, if you still have her with you, she's a very welcome addition.
No, sorry about that. I was just waiting for her grandpa to pick her up at 2, and he just came, so I'm alone right now.
But it was a lovely addition to have for a while, and I am still going to class her as our youngest participant ever. She 4 or 5 months?
3.5.
3.5. Well, she's gorgeous. Thank you very much. That lightened up my afternoon already.
Thank you so much.
Now to the rest of the day, I hope you remember yesterday we did a little bit around our broader AKIS family, and I'd like to share with you now some additional photos from Jagodic, who also very kindly sent them in. So we had a couple from Shane yesterday, and we have a couple from Tajana today. And I was hoping you'd be able to unmute yourself and just tell us a little bit about your how I got through lockdown photos.
Hello to all participants. Do you hear me?
We do, we do.
Hello. Okay, perfect. First, I would like to congratulate to all team for a great organization and animation of all of us. It's not easy, so you really did a great job yesterday and this morning. Also, I'm coming from Croatian Chamber of Agriculture, representing a roof organization of farm associations, and we have 18 different committees. This photo was made in our committee for horses, and one of our farmers had struggles with connection to Zoom meeting, and he was so annoyed that he left the meeting. We didn't know where he is, and after a while he came to president of this committee in his house, breaking all corona and epidemic rules. So we couldn't continue because it was so funny during all meeting after, because everybody just enjoy this situation, and it was really funny. The second photo was I had my first exit after lockdown. And this was, first exit was on TV studio, which was very tiny with 5 people. And I was a little bit afraid of this corona situation. So you could see all fear in my eyes, what will happen next. So fortunately, I didn't get any, and everything was successful. Thank you.
Brilliant, thank you, Tajana. And that's definitely an interesting way of coping if your technology doesn't work. You just turn up at somebody's house instead. Thank you. So this afternoon, our program ahead of us, we've essentially split into 2 parts. So our section before coffee, we are going to be focusing on integrating advisors into AKIS to foster the sharing of knowledge and innovation. So again, we have some inspirational presentations and an opportunity for you to ask any questions that you have over those, and we will do our best to get them answered for you. So remember, when the presentations are going, just to pop those questions into your chat. We'll have a short poll after that and then break for coffee. And this afternoon, after coffee, we will then be focusing on preparing the role of CAP networks in strengthening the AKIS, and again some more inspirational presentations and the chance to kind of chat about those amongst yourselves on the chat, as well as asking questions. One thing somebody had asked us over lunch was we've had a few late arrivals on our participants list, so you're trying to track each other down, so we will make sure that we update that list and send it out to you as soon as possible, so that you can make sure that you can catch up with the people that you've started to make those connections with. Brilliant. So my first job of the afternoon is to hand over to Inge van Oost again, who is going to provide us with a brief introduction to integrating advisors into the AKIS. Thanks, Inge. I'll pass over to you.
Good afternoon. We're starting the afternoon with zooming in on the role of advisors. And this is a quite essential part of our work within the AKIS, because we're completely overhauling the past and looking to a different way of working with advisors in our CAP policy. Here are the articles, the main articles. Article 13 explains, and Article 72 gives you all the leeway for a variety of support that you can organize around farm advice. First of all, it has to be included in the CAP plans. Second, the advisors must be integrated within the AKIS in order to cover economic, environmental and social dimensions, so very broad range if you compare it with the past, and also to deliver up-to-date technological and scientific information developed by research and innovation. So you see the link with research and with multi-actor or operational group projects is quite important. Last but not least, advisors must be impartial and be able to provide support for innovation, in particular to help for preparing and implementing operational group projects of the EIP-AGRI. So how are we going to do this? And the numbering here that you see refers to what you find with much more detail in the AKIS report. First of all, advisors should not work as linear knowledge transfer people anymore. They have to be much more listening. There's no one farm. Every farm is different, and so work much more interactive, maybe with discussion groups, or in any case be more listening oriented. Our field advisors, those are on the road, are expected to deliver holistic advice, which is really targeted to the farm and the farmer's content. We don't have public procurement anymore. That will not be one of your worries. But innovation support must be available, and we also expect that they help in participating in and also sharing the knowledge from operational groups. Training is important, and you can think about maybe a specific amount of obligatory training per year, especially on these innovative techniques and outcomes of operational groups, multi-actor projects, but also maybe for soft skills. This interactiveness can be learned, and this is really very important these days because farmers are well educated and they don't take advanced advice just for granted. They want to discuss it. Tools for innovation support can be developed that many advisors can use. For instance, you could even set up a complete farm advisory service with Article 72, like what you see here, a mobile advisory unit where you can measure the blood, whether a cow is pregnant, and all these kind of things. It's important to link these different forms of and methods of advisory work. Individual advice, but also maybe bringing a few people together for discussion groups, provide training for these advisors, workshops where they can exchange amongst themselves, get them to organize or at least participate in demonstration, and make events to update their knowledge. After the privatization wave that we have since the 90s, give these advisory services again a public role by strengthening support from the AKIS for advisors, for instance through this back office. Cross visits, so going abroad and learning peer-to-peer from other advisors is a great way to get knowledge in your country which is not available there. Make freedom for new advisory teams. Don't limit yourself to the obligatory teams. There's the chain approach which is important. Short supply chains are really key now. Maybe bio-based chains, the dialogue with society, social care farming, etc. Spend also time with entrepreneurs and researchers. So link innovative investments or research facilities with advice. You can make advisory networks which are region-wide, maybe country-wide. We even have under Horizon EU-wide advisory networks, which we also are going to continue in the next period to share that knowledge generated. In a thematic network, Horizon thematic network, you can also have a lot of advisors who can exchange. Internships and placements in research stations or training facilities are a possibility. Dedicated actions you will need to do to involve also the private advisors who were until now hardly involved, not only through training, but also with other information flows, with maybe some common advisory tools, this back office support that can serve all advisors. Digitization is, of course, a good element to help all this. And what also attracts is to simplify the administration. And we think that the main instruments for future AKIS are this innovation hub, an innovation support service, and also the knowledge hub, which we call the back office for advisors, where this practical knowledge is collected and at the service of the field advisors. You can see links where much more information is available. So this gives in a picture a little bit what the farm advisors can do in our EIP operational groups. They can first of all capture practice needs. Then they can help to prepare the projects. In the projects, when they are selected, they can facilitate these projects because they are a good intermediate person. And they can, of course, disseminate this to all their clients and even to a broader audience by using them in events. They are very communicative normally, so they are good persons to use. And they are also a very good bridge between the CAP and Horizon. So a big potential there that you can use. Now, how can this innovation brokering work? How to capture grassroots ideas? It's really helping a single actor with a good idea in finding the right and adequate partners. And that's why it's important to understand agriculture and not to forget also to look to other sectors, other regions, other institutes, to have a cross-cutting approach. So you have to mix both, understand agriculture, but also look to other and look across the wall, let's say. And don't forget that vouchers can be interesting to make the cost organization much simpler for everybody, as well for the administration as for the advisors. I give one example on innovation broker, how it can work. From a farmer's idea, which saw that there was a difference between two stables. One stable he hired, and he had less ammonia emissions there, and he didn't know why. So he went to an innovation support service, and they brought together researchers, environmental stations, agricultural stable researchers, and also a company selling bacteria products, because the assumption was that maybe it's that bacteria product that can help to reduce ammonia emissions. And it worked. They had an objective to reduce 50%, and they could indeed reduce 30%, which makes a lot of difference for the costs, because otherwise you have to pay electricity and buy costly ventilators and scrubbers. So this is an overview, and I won't go into detail of all the things that an innovation support service can do. There are other presentations that give you more information on that. This is a list of the skills. As I said, listening is important for brokers, for any advisor. They have to be good analyzers also to tackle the problem, have this good network, good intermediating skills, be quality oriented, that the plan for the project that they make, that it's good and coherent, that it will be selected, and of course think out of the box. We have a dedicated result indicator on that, And here you find, and you can read that later on, a few examples of interventions that can contribute to the integration of advisors within the AKIS. And now come our three speakers, which will present, first of all, a fully fledged nationwide, countrywide, I would say, advisory service. A second one, which is an NGO who started delivering advice for a specific purpose, Razvan will call you. And third, then more information about this innovation support. This doesn't mean that you have to follow each of these three examples. Other options are possible. You have to look to your member state's context and your existing organizations, and multiple solutions may coexist. However, keep your mind open. Try to enable as much advisory functions as possible and coordinate them. Avoid overlap. Don't forget to be open for new advisors and new teams. So this is a bit my final message to give before I give the word to our speakers.
Thank you, Inge. That was a really useful overview. And as Inge said, we have three presenters coming up now. So please do keep your questions going. And first, I'd like to introduce Anton Jagodic, who's going to talk about integration of Slovenian advisors in AKIS.
Thank you. In this presentation, I will highlight the integration of Slovenian advisors in AKIS system, and all words which are colored in red show this integration. The Public Agricultural Advisory Service in Slovenia works in 9 legal entities under the Chamber of Agriculture and Forestry of Slovenia. We cover all regions in Slovenia, all types of farms, and all farm systems. We have 315 advisors, organized in 3 levels. We are 80% public funded. Our agriculture determines small holding, many of them working in less favored areas. We have a weak farm and age structure of our owners. Our main task. The first is related to the technological, economic, and environmental field of agriculture activity. The second is connected with different ways to help farms in their development. Remember, all words which are in red show the integration with other stakeholders in AKIS system. The next task is advising and assisting in implementing agriculture policy measure, including FAS. We work with all types farm organizations and associations. And last but not the least, we work in management, coordination, system development, technological and methodological training of our advisors. When we look deeper in the interaction with main AKIS actors in Slovenia, we see where we can improve situation. This weakness point have negative effect on entire AKIS system. We recognize that connection needs to be improved, which stakeholders where knowledge exists and develop. We are also involved in European Innovation Partnership. We are active in AP subgroup of innovation, and our advisors were involved in IP focus group. We also participate in organized workshops and meetings. In Slovenia, advisors are parts of operational group by regular national regulation. We organize meetings where OGs are invited. We share information to farmers about OGs projects, and we think that M16 is a legal good measure. We believe in strong linkage between farms and their field advisor. In our case, advisors work with the same farms all their professional period. A trust between the farmer and his advisor is good ground for knowledge process. The field advisor can always include help from different specialist advisors which cover all technological fields with more experiences and knowledge. Specialist advisors for rural development integrate different types of economic advices and take care of connecting farm investment cycle with the support needs and connect them for given option in rural development investment measures. They do preparation and implementation of the RDP. Their daily work is promote, measure, and share all relevant information about measures in real time. Advisors for family farms and diversification of farm working in all type of diversification, for example, processing of primary agriculture products, sale of farm products, on-farm tourism, energy from renewable sources, and social issues. Advisor specialists for food and non-food processing work with farms with this activity type, and also with beginners to establish their new businesses. Slovenia has 16 different public services in agriculture. Some of them operate within the chamber system, and this forms basis for daily exchange of knowledge with public service experts. In back office work, we manage expert group, bringing together specialist advisors, researchers, faculty, and other stakeholders, relevant experts for different tasks. They organize training for advisors and prepare different type of material and tools, and also collect all data from advisors about their work. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Anton. I think that there will be many questions coming for you. That was a really interesting overview of what's happening in Slovenia. I'd now like to welcome Razvan Popa from the Adept Foundation, who will be talking about his experience delivering advice from an NGO perspective. So Razvan, thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much for the invitation. Thank you very much for all the presentation until now. I think it's a very relevant subject for all the countries, but mostly for Romania in the next years, because we will need an efficient and a good advisory service. Today, I will speak about a small NGO that started as a biodiversity conservation in 2004. And during the time, it developed and has now an integrated approach to be able to respond to all the needs in the local communities where we are working. I am Razvan Popa. I'm working for ADEPT since 2007, and I am a biologist. ADEPT is coming from agriculture development and environmental protection in Transylvania, and our mission is to protect the high nature value landscape, but also the communities that created them. We are working in Natura 2000 site, about 85,000 hectares. It is designated for species and habitats, but we are working also in a cultural landscape, very beautiful cultural landscape, but very complex. At the beginning, as we started as a nature conservation NGO, we didn't want to have this romantic approach, and we tried to base all our action on science and on markets. That's why we developed our approach on 5 principles. One is biodiversity conservation at landscape level, identify and protect the hotspots, work with the communities, influence policy, and young professional building and staff development. In our region, we have high biodiversity for species and habitats that are also on the European directive, but also a lot of threats and challenges that are coming when you are trying to save and to conserve all these values. That's why during the time we developed an integrated approach. Now we have an interdisciplinary team that is working on policy, agri-environment and common agriculture policy, publicity. We are organizing festivals. We are doing long-term studies, inventorying, monitoring for species and habitats. We try to diversify and identify new products, branding, tourism, and added value to local products and services. Even as a small NGO, we had good success in our region. And we think that this kind of approach, an interdisciplinary approach, would be also very needed in AKIS. Because advisors are mostly in the field, they are in permanent contact with the farmers, and they are trusted by them. How do we react in these 5 principles? In this long-term monitoring, we are looking also on social indicators, socio-economical indicators, but also environmental indicators to be able to respond in time. We are working with the communities through a multi-stakeholder approach. We are not working only with farmers, we are working also with producers, with farmers associations, with institutions at regional and national level. We are working with school children. We try to develop different partnerships in different projects. We try to develop communication tools to be able to be mostly in contact with our farmers and in permanent contact with them. We have also concrete action when they are identifying hotspots and there is need of intervention. We are trying to influence policy because we have a good collaboration with the Ministry of Agriculture, and we are members in different technical working groups on agriculture, environmental, monitoring committee. We are trying to take the problems and to identify the problems from our region, bring them in the working groups, and try together with the ministry to respond to the needs that our farmers and beneficiaries have. Always we are trying to develop our staff and also outside of our depth to be able to have the knowledge when it's needed. And our work was always based on impartiality, interaction, facilitation is very important because there could be knowledge, but there are no tools or methods how to disseminate the knowledge. And we try as much as possible to find practical solution for our beneficiary through the permanent consultation. Our objective is to keep the balance through this integrated approach because this brings diversification, economic vitality, and beauty. Success is a series of small wins. That's why I think small adapted policy can have a big impact and can keep the sustainable environment and also the economy balanced. If we can develop the ability of the local community to capitalize that opportunities, then our work is recognized. We think that it's really important to include all the advisors, private or small or big or public, because there is knowledge, they have the experience to be in the field, and they have the trust of their beneficiaries. Thank you very much. I had only 5 minutes for the presentation. Sorry that I'm a little bit with 1 minute more, but I'm really open for all your questions, and I hope we will have time also for the discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Razvan. That's a really wonderful example of how that type of advisor integration is already working so well on a local and regional level. I would now like to invite Marleen Gijssen to talk to us about developing innovation support services. Thank you, Marleen.
Hello, my name is Marleen Gijssen and I work at Innovatiesteunpunt, the Innovation Support Center for Agricultural and Rural Development in the region of Flanders in Belgium. In the next minutes, I will briefly explain some examples of tools that we use to support our functions as an Innovation Support Center. My colleague Wim Keulemans already explained these functions, and I will shortly repeat some of them. First of all, we try to inspire farmers to motivate them to innovate. We are innovation brokers between researchers, innovation partners, and farmers. We train action-oriented, and we give advice on a range of themes, from forming cooperatives in order to reduce greenhouse gas emissions at a farm, to switching to organic productions, for example. With different brainstorming techniques and methodologies, like the GPS method, as you can see in these pictures, we facilitate multi-actor creation. We bring people with different backgrounds together to work on innovative solutions. A very nice example of this is the co-creation process, where creative designers on the one hand and farmers on the other hand collaborate to design new products in order to reduce food losses. With our academy on tour, we take farmers on a bus trip, sometimes also abroad, for example, for looking for new farm products or concepts. Together with experts from outside agriculture, we have work sessions on the bus. As you can see, no time is wasted. Those days are quite intensive, as you can imagine. For us, it's a great way for farmers to pitch their ideas and to get immediate response, feedback and support from the experts, as well as from their colleague farmers who are also at the bus. Our Farmers with Power tool is a 6 steps approach to come to an energy sustainable and efficient farm. We always start with an inventory of the energy process at the farm. How much energy is needed, when is energy needed, and now know your farm. We give tips and tricks about the energy bill, and we calculate and we simulate, always in dialogue with the farmers, of course, and tailor to the farm, which energy saving measures and which measures to produce sustainable energy on the farm are possible. We also have a look at how this self-produced energy can be optimally used on farm, and finally, whether it is also possible and profitable to collaborate with fellow farmers or with citizens in energy communities. And last, but absolutely not least, we organize every 2 years our Innovation Prize. We do this with an open call. We invite farmers from all over the region of Flanders to submit their innovative ideas. Whether it is an early idea or an idea that is already a bit further in the realization phase. Per 2 colleagues from different fields, from different backgrounds, we try to visit all farms that have submitted, and we talk intensively with the farmers themselves, which sometimes give rise to extra ideas. In addition to a money prize for the 5 winners, they also receive support and advice from us to further develop their innovative idea. And this can take 1 or 2 years, depending on the case, of course. Finally, we bring these stories of the participants, not only the winners, in the weekly magazine of the farmers' organization Boerenmond to inspire the entire agricultural community. Thank you all for listening and for your attention, and do not hesitate to contact me when having questions. Bye.
Thank you, Marleen, and thank you again to Inge, Razvan, and Anton as well. It was a really interesting session. Just before we get round to asking your questions, before we arrived at the seminar, you all very kindly filled in some Google Docs for us with your ideas and experiences and inspirations. So I'm going to hand over to Mark now, who will be looking at putting together all of the comments you made around the Google Doc on integrating all advisors into AKIS to support farmer decision making, just to see the kind of things that you were coming up with. So Mark, tell us what the Google Doc said.
Thank you, Sarah. Can you hear me okay there?
We can indeed.
Great, great. Look, before I start, I just wanted to say thank you to everybody who contributed to the Google Docs. We have amassed a wealth of knowledge and experience within these documents. So I just have a few minutes just to summarize some of the outcomes from the documents. I can tell you that the documents are still available for you to view. We have switched off the editing function on them, but again, thank you for your contributions. And I think this will help us produce some guidance for everybody over the next number of weeks and months. So document B was focused on integrating advisors in the AKIS to foster the sharing of knowledge and innovation for agriculture and rural areas. So I'm going to briefly go through some of the findings and some of the comments that were made, some really insightful comments that we received. Identifying impartial advisors was one of the questions. So one of the points there is that we do need to define what we mean by impartial advisory. For example, private for-profit advisors must be accepted as impartial only if their activities do not include input selling. So there's a lot of discussion around that. You know, what do we actually mean by an impartial advisor? And I think that was probably one of the better definitions that came through. Another suggestion here is that a register of advisors or advisory services that are trained to a minimum standard should be in place in each member state. It will be more efficient to ask advisors to identify themselves. So how do we, that identification process? So self-identification and set a criteria of what it means to be an impartial advisor is needed. An online rating system to rate the quality of work by an advisor. So the meaning here is that farmers would rate their advisor. So a little, probably more controversial approach, but certainly something that was mentioned a number of times throughout the Google document. We need coherent messages going to farmers from all parties from visiting farms. So that very much underlines the importance of having a coherent AKIS, and that there are messages there that not just the farm advisor, but the vet and banking officials, whoever it might be, that there is a consistency of messaging there. Attracting and integrating advisors into the AKIS, a good working environment, clear purpose and aims, career opportunities, appropriate remuneration, and recognition of the role. So obviously, if we want to attract the right people and the top people to these roles, we need to properly remunerate them. The feeling of belonging to a group, and obviously that can be a big issue, particularly we know that a lot of advisors are sometimes working on their own. So that feeling of belonging to a wider group is really, really important. An AKIS coordinator, this came up in our earlier discussions here, having a national service point, should they be responsible for explaining a very clear message of AKIS system benefits, rules for advisors, financial support, and what concrete additional value can be expected. And providing training for advisors, them being advisors, and have them recognize the benefits of belonging to a club. The National Rural Networks organizes camps in one country and information days for all advisors. Researchers, innovation, brokers, advisors share their activities. So these are some examples of what's happening in some member states. Regular newsletters for advisors and other organizations and websites, so keeping them plugged into a network I think is the point being made here. And then the need to provide supports such as budget for meetings and traveling, so that we remove those barriers for interaction. And I liked the quote there in the last presentation about bridging the gaps. I think that's very much summarizes the role here of the innovation support service. So creating transparency for farmers on the available advisors and their competencies, specialist knowledge, training completed. So I've kind of pulled together a number of the suggestions that have come through here, that a searchable database of advisors showing their lifelong learning credits and perhaps the rating of advisors by farmer clients. There's also a suggestion there of the use of blockchain to help this, and then defining the areas of expertise. What are the key competencies of the advisors? An EU-wide certification based on similar principles to SECRA was also suggested, and then farmer buy-in is crucial to this. And that's something that I think we have to remind ourselves of regularly, is that farmers have to be very much part of this conversation. So how can we empower farmers to choose the advisor of his or her choice, which can help them best, and how to articulate and promote the benefits of using an advisor? So providing a neutral party that can help farmers with choosing the right advisor. So that kind of ties in with that role of the coordination of the AKIS, as was referred to earlier. Advisors have to be visible, for example, giving lectures, attending courses through the media, etc. And we have to promote the benefits of advisory during agricultural college, so when young farmers are being trained, for them to understand the services that are available to them. And we, of course, have to promote advisory in general with farmers and other stakeholders. Obtaining some subsidies would be linked to the contracting of an advisor, and advisory fees valued and fixed would be included into the plan presented for obtaining the subsidy. So these are other ways of, I suppose, ensuring subsidization, proper funding of the service. So question 5, we looked at how can advisors act as innovation support services, and in particular work with the EIP operational groups. So make innovation support a specifically recognized discipline of advice. That was very strong in the document, that there is a defined skill set required, and preferably even an organizationally separate branch of the advisory service with their own set of requirements concerning training and experience. There's some discussion about that, about whether or not This is a horizontal skill that all advisors should have, rather than just having a specially trained innovation broker. So that's maybe something we can discuss over the next few days. So innovation support skills can be trained and funding is needed. And I'm aware that there is a new module being developed within SECRA to support this innovation support and networking. Our experience of the Rural Innovation Support Service is that you need to have expertise in both the subject matter and in brokerage facilitation. So that's the point I think I was making earlier on there. Question 6 then, with regard to preparing CAP plans, what kind of supporting interventions are most useful to integrate existing and new advisors to the AKIS? So the cost of advisory services should not be a financial burden to farmers. I think that was a general point across the board, was this looking at the barriers to access to advisory services by farmers. Consider training budget to help existing and new advisors to stay up to date on hot topics like smart and sustainable agriculture and data-driven agriculture. So that notion of providing training budgets, we have first-hand experience of that in Ireland, where it can be a barrier for advisors, particularly those working independently, to access training, because obviously there's a time commitment, but also there's a cost commitment there as well. So set up a range of well-defined set of enabling arrangements, the inclusion of advisors and stakeholders, consultation, participation in CAP planning, assessment of the needs for services of farmers, identification of the definition of the relevant training courses to increase the skills and competencies of advisors. So advisors, I suppose, need to be there at the decision-making table, or certainly part of the high-level conversations in terms of developing the AKIS and those enabling arrangements. So question 7, do you have concrete plans already on how to make the transition from FAS to an AKIS setup? So these are some of the feedback we got. We prepare a totally new setup of our advisory system within AKIS, new registration system, new measurements, vouchers and learning networks, better networking between AKIS members, and promoting the AKIS system. Then we support them working together, advisors working together, incentives and measure the effort made by researchers and technology transfer specialists to support field advisors with information. So that's a topic we'll be discussing tomorrow, that incentivizing researchers to engage with technology transfer. Sweden then plans to increase the amount of resources spent on training advisors. So that's a summary of the Google Doc B that everybody contributed to over the last number of weeks. So we do appreciate the efforts that people put into that over the last number of weeks. So though I'm only capturing a summary of the suggestions that came through in the documents, so they are available for people to view afterwards. So back to you, Sarah.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you, Mark. That was a really useful summary. I can see that several of you have been asking questions of our presenters, so hopefully they're ready to fire some answers back at you. We've got about 10 minutes now. So Mark, I'm anticipating you've been hurriedly multitasking, and hopefully you've had a chance to spot some questions as well.
Yes, and thanks to Sergio for his assistance in the background there. So we have some questions here for Inge and for the other speakers as well. If I can just pull up the right document that I was looking at there a minute ago. So, Inge, question here for you from Spain. The integration of advisors, as it's mentioned on regulations, CAP strategic plan, still on debate. When is it forecasted to have a final version on this regulation, and how member states and management authorities should deal with this uncertainty? Do we have to assume that coming versions should only include minor changes?
Thank you, Mark. It's very important questions, I think, and I'm happy that it comes forward. I already tried to reply in the chat, but the question is, you can assume that this is the almost final version. Why? Because we've been since June 2018 discussing in the Council Working Party the whole regulation. And there were a few changes and clarifications. For instance, we added the AKIS definition. We added explicitly that cross-border we want, because it was not there explicitly. So in the first 6 months, we clarified a few things. But then, in fact, we had 2 presidencies where almost nothing changed. So it looks like from the council side, everybody is happy with it. Also, the former parliament did not ask any questions in particular on these articles. The current parliament neither. So if we put all this together, of course, we stay convinced that it is important, we as Commission. So the end of such a process before a regulation is voted is called a trialogue, where then Parliament, Council and the Commission decide together on the final version. It appears we are already on one line for more than 1 year, maybe a year and a half already. So I must say, I don't expect, well, any change I cannot say, but I think it's more or less final. But things are only final when they are voted.
Thank you, Inge. We have another question. It says, thank you very much for all the suggestions to integrate advisors. How can it be ensured that all advisors will take this train or jump on this train, I guess? Isn't there a risk that the relevant requirements will maintain an exclusion of notable private, more individual advisors, a risk that only a very small top of open advisors will follow this? So I guess that's bringing private and individual or independent advisors into the loop. Inge, what do you say to that?
Well, of course, part of the decision is with the private advisors themselves. And we already touched upon that subject, saying that we have to make it attractive for them and maybe ensure funding that they come to these trainings or obligations that they come to these trainings in order to be in the register and to be allowed to profit from EU subsidies. So there is, of course, part of the decision with the private. But I think there's also an effort to be done from the administration to make sure that the message comes through to these private advisors, and that what is offered is made attractive enough and useful enough to provide exactly what they need. And what do they need? They need to keep their clients. So it's in fact what the farmer needs. And the training and whatever we offer to those advisors always has to keep this in mind. What would a farmer need? Because as policymakers, we are of course very concerned about climate change, environment, etc. But you have to package it in a way that it becomes interesting for farmers to join. And typically what we will hear later on this example of an operational group with advisors working side by side with farmers to develop a new cap measure is typical, a very good example to involve any advisor, private or public, to get in this mindset of looking more to environment and looking to the right measures, being aware about the right measures to take. Sometimes it's not difficult to take them, and maybe also adapt your other cap measures to this on the somewhat longer term or directly. But there are many angles to tackle this, I think, in our regulation, and let's hope with sufficient communication on this that we get there.
Thank you, Inge. We have time for just one last question, and Razvan, if I could put this to you. everyone complimenting you on your presentation. The question is, how and in what way do you think that a small size farm coming from a marginal agricultural area can be integrated into the AKIS? You've been working very closely with small farmers in Transylvania. So can you tell us about your experience there?
Thank you very much for the question. I think in the end, it's our responsibility to identify this kind of beneficiary, small or big, because our local initiatives, and mostly they are not coming to ask for help. And that's why it's good to have also other types of activities, like I mentioned, festivals or farmers meeting or workshop where they can come and perhaps discuss about other problems, and then they will ask also for help. But also what I think in Romania, I don't know if in other countries, I think all these small farmers, we are trying since years to develop a strong association with a good management for the small farmers. And I hope in the future we would have this kind of association, and then they will be members in this association, and hopefully we will not need to work anymore very much only with individuals, and we could work also with associations that will work and act in the benefit of the individuals.
Thank you, Razvan. And I just want to compliment you on the work that you're doing. I had the opportunity to visit ADEPT and during the AgriSpin project, and also in Belgium, very interesting projects and great examples of how the AKIS is working. With that, I'm going to hand back to Sarah, and thank you to all of our panel for excellent contributions. And again, we do encourage you to keep the questions coming through the chat. Whilst we mightn't have a chance to ask or answer the questions here live, we will endeavour to answer those questions at some point in the future.
Brilliant, thank you, Mark. And yes, thank you to all of our presenters for brilliant presentations and also great answers to the questions. So before we leave each other for a coffee break, it is once again time to flex out those fingers, ready for a poll. So we have 4 questions we're going to ask you relating to the levels of advisor integration within your AKIS. And there may or may not also be a question relating to our broader AKIS family. See if you can spot which one that is. So if you're ready, we'll go with our first poll. Which of these creatures is a fellow member of the AKIS family? Is there such a thing as an AKIS beetle, an AKIS frog, or an AKIS worm? I quite like the idea of there being an AKIS frog, as in you have to kiss a frog in order to turn it into something more attractive, but that might not necessarily be the answer. I'm pleased to see that a lot of you are feeling ready and able to answer the wider AKIS family questions. Thank you for that. And well, this is a little bit neck and neck, this one. We have over 100 votes, and there's only 1 vote in it right now. So you have voted for the AKIS worm to be part of the AKIS family. So the 44 of you that went for that are just horribly wrong. It was the AKIS beetle. So another part of the broader AKIS community that we need to bring together. Fantastic. Let's go on to quiz question 2, poll 2. Oh, we're still on our AKIS family. So the remaining 3 will be about your AKIS advisors and how integration is growing. So how do you feel about further integrating advisors in the AKIS in your country? Easy, they're already involved, and so we know who and where they are. Okay, the majority are involved, but I've now realised there are others we need to include. Or difficult, people giving advice are quite diverse, and it will take some time to find and include them. So go with whichever option is most relevant for your country. So it's looking like this might still be a challenge for many of us, with most of us either going for difficult, because they are definitely a diverse bunch, but also some of us for going, okay, you've got a lot of them involved, but there is still a way to go. And yeah, look at that, very close again, 46 votes for one and 48 for the other. So that could be a really interesting area for continued collaboration after this event. Wonderful. Let's go on to our third question. Do you feel you already have or know how to develop the interventions you need to effectively integrate advisors into your AKIS? So yes, I feel confident we can do this. I think we have some of the tools we need, but we need to develop more. Well, there's still quite a long road ahead. This is more complex than I thought, so we still have lots to do. This is a really interesting one because already we've heard about so many different interventions and different ways of creating that integration. But it looks like the majority of people are feeling that they have some of the tools, which is really good news, but there's still space to develop a few more. And it's great to see that there are also people that feel really confident that they can do this and their AKIS is ready to create that integration. So brilliant, yes. So most of you think you have the tools but might need to develop some more. Okay, and our last question. Do you feel that advisors in your country will easily make the transition into innovation support services or as innovation brokers? So yes, they're delivering a similar service already, so it shouldn't be too difficult. Some advisors already deliver this role or are preparing for it, but there are many who need more support. Or no, this hasn't been a role that our advisors are used to delivering, so we will need to support most of them in this transition. So again, we have a few people that are feeling that their advisors will be able to easily make that transition. So definitely some learning to be had from those. And I think most, again, saying that some advisors are already doing this, but they again have to provide some support to improve the understanding of those advisors, but also to bring the others on board as well. Brilliant. But still, a third of you, quite a significant amount, saying that this transition is going to require an awful lot of support. Thank you. So hopefully that's given you a bit of a snapshot of where different countries are and how, as a group, as a new AKIS family, we're feeling about advisor integration and that transition from FAST to AKIS in our own countries. So it's now time for coffee. The one thing that I have to tell you, which is vitally important before you go to coffee, is do not switch off your Zoom. So feel free to mute yourself and turn your camera off if you want to. But because there's so many of us, which is fantastic, there's nearly 200 of us involved at the moment, we won't be able to get all of you back on in time. So yeah, mute, switch your cameras off, but don't leave the meeting. And we will see you back here at 3:20 Brussels time. Wonderful, thank you very much. I must say, I've just realised that the horror of not being actually physically able to meet together is exacerbated by, I go back to my room of an evening and it's not been tidied. I go for a coffee break and the selection of biscuits is not nearly as exciting as it is if we're in a conference facility. So there's many things I think that we're probably all missing about not being in the same room. So for the rest of the afternoon, we are now going to focus on preparing the role of CAP networks in strengthening the AKIS. And we're going to have a similar kind of format to how we did after lunch. So Inge will do an introduction for us. And then we have some more inspirational speakers that have some great examples of what they're doing in their countries. And then we'll have some polls and finish off through that. So first I will hand over to Inge van Oost for her introductory slides. Thank you, Inge.
Good afternoon, dear audience. I hope you had a nice coffee break and you're a bit relaxed, because we're going now to look into the CAP network's role in strengthening the AKIS. How can CAP networks help strengthening innovation and knowledge exchange? First of all, by using everything we have from our more than 3,000 operational groups, from our Horizon 2020 multi-actor projects, and of course from all those projects still to come in the period post-2020, because both Horizon projects, multi-actor projects and operational groups will continue. We find all this now on the EIP website. As a CAP network, you can work with it. And as I said, we will also try to build a knowledge reservoir at EU level. This connecting of operational groups with Horizon project gives great added value and is certainly a point of improvement. We learned that from our study. You will have a lot of material from that will provide great input for local AKIS actors, whether it's training for advisors or for farmers, for peer-to-peer events, in demonstrations, websites, e-learning, for innovation support services. Everybody in your AKIS can learn from it. And not to forget, of course, physical events are important, because if this material is presented there, you can link up at the same time your actors of your AKIS, and this is a moment for them to network, to learn to know each other, to trust each other, and future cooperation and innovation can start there. So test these future interventions already now and try to brainstorm in your AKIS coordination platform how you will do it in the next period. One of the biggest issues where we can improve the work of the current NRNs and the EIP networks are the synergies with Horizon. So we're really looking to intensify the innovation network with Horizon, and this can be done by the national contact points. As we have CAP networks, they also have specific contact points. So connect, see each other maybe each month, so that you know all about what's happening on the Horizon side and when calls and projects are there. Also from your side, you have to promote and make your operational groups as visible as possible. So you do a database with all operational groups in the member states, add the contacts and make nice categories that they can easily find it. Follow the yearly Horizon calls, be proactive, present the topics to your operational groups, make a brokering event, think about cross-border events even. And don't forget also when the projects are already running, that operational groups or their partners can always be invited to the events of their interest. So give them support to do so. As you heard, knowledge reservoirs are in. We are trying to create one at EU level to serve the advisors' back offices and innovation support services. And also a number of countries are already very active, and we will try to make all that interactive so that at EU level we will have all this practice-oriented knowledge, easy, accessible, interactive and attractive.
Thank you, Inge. That was a really useful overview.
Good afternoon to all.
Oh, and I'm sorry, I'm going to pass on to Krzysztof Janiak now from the Advisory Centre in Brzów in Poland. Thank you.
Good afternoon to all the participants of our seminar. My name is Krzysztof Janiak. I work for the Agricultural Advisory Center in Poland, and I have pleasure to tell you a few words about our advisory system and about our networking, EIP networking system. Just to start with my presentation, I hope you could see it well. Our agricultural advisory service in Poland is provided through different institutions, by public agricultural advisory services, by advisory of farmers associations, and it's provided to private sector. We have private advisors in companies and in consulting firms. But the dominating role is played by the public agricultural advisory service, which is Agricultural Advisory Center in Vinów and 16 regional agricultural advisory centers. Just to show you on a map, we cover the whole country, and our units are located in each region of the country. The EIP network in Poland is coordinated by our Agricultural Advisory Center and 16 regional centers, and we offer a wide range of tools and services that facilitate networking activities. I will focus on benefits of creating the EIP network based on public agricultural advisory services in Poland. First of all is our organizational potential and nationwide structure. This is what I mentioned. We are strong institutions, we have a strong infrastructure, and we are located in each region of Poland. We employ very experienced staff. Our advisors are accredited. They are passing trainings, exams, and they are impartial because they work for our public units, so they are not interested in selling any goods or products. And our units and our people, we have very strong relations and contacts with all stakeholders in rural areas. In the network, the key role is played by innovation brokers who are also employed by our units. Sometimes these are also advisors. And we employ coordinators of the network, and they play a role, admin and supporting roles. It's important to tell that create the brokering system was only the first step, but then it was really important to maintain a group of brokers, to create a network of brokers who work together, exchange information together, and support each other. The tasks of EIP network in Poland, I think it's similar to tasks of the network in other countries. So we cover the whole range of activities, starting from identification of stakeholders, through exchange of knowledge, through supporting in creating partnerships. And the key role, as I mentioned, is played by innovation brokers. We employ 23 brokers centrally and regionally, and we try them to play a new role in that interactive innovation process. So they are responsible mainly for capturing new ideas from farmers and scientists. They are responsible for gathering those actors and facilitating the whole process of preparation the projects. Our brokers and advisors, they participate in operational groups as experts, but they do not always are dedicated facilitators in those groups and projects. So I think that's just for the beginning, few words. And I'm sure that in other countries, the systems are organized in different way. So I think it will be interesting to exchange our views, information, to be better prepared for the new perspective, new coming period. Thank you very much.
Hi, thank you. That was a really interesting overview there of what's happening in Poland. And I'm sure it will be interesting to ask any questions about how it's developing in your country and anything that you could learn. So I'm now going to hand over to Erica Frankhausen from the National Rural Network in the Netherlands, who's going to talk to us a little bit about networking meetings with operational groups. Thank you, Erica.
Good morning. My name is Erika Frankhuizen. I work at the National Rural Network Unit of the Netherlands, and I've been asked to explain our approach with network meetings with operational groups. But first, something about our network. We have a fragmented and strong network in the Netherlands, you can see here. We have a high amount of parties involved in the Dutch system, and that's also the power of the system, the diversity of people involved. Important is to know that the provinces and the regions make the calls for proposals. That resulted in over 300 EEP projects and 125 knowledge transfer projects. We collected the data of those projects and put them in an innovation database. The database you can find on our website, and it gives information about the projects, not only EEP, but also knowledge transfer, and or that in the near future also knowledge transfer projects and leader and other projects. But the challenge for us is that we have those more than 400 projects. These projects create a substantial amount of knowledge and experience, and the knowledge is available but fragmented. So what do we do as NRN? We search for inspiring projects and farmers and put them in the spotlights. How do we do that? We make online publications, innovation database, we use social media, storytelling, podcasts, and we organize network meetings. Here you see an example of our publications. Online, we made thematic online publications on soil, on biodiversity, on supply chain, and also on climate, and now on water. What do we do for those publications? We make interviews with people in our network. And here you see some examples. Sometimes there are interviews at the kitchen table at the farmer, but also interviews with researchers, policy makers, and advisors. And we give overviews of the projects. We also organize network meetings. We saw in the database that 2/3 of the projects in the database are on arable farming, dairy farming, and new markets. So we started with thematic network meetings on those subjects. We asked the participants of the meetings to present their projects with presentation, a poster, and discuss in small group specific issues. And the aim was to connect people, projects, and knowledge. We did it also across the border, and one example is the exchange with Niedersachsen. On both sides of the border, there are operational groups. They are both working on the subject as soil. And they met in a meeting, they exchanged experience, and now they're working on a joint Interreg application. So we saw, but we wanted more. We don't want a meeting, standalone meeting, but we want after a meeting that there are follow-up activities. So now we're focusing more on the farmer and the projects. With our network, we organize regional meetings on location, and there we want to identify and resolve bottlenecks and problems they experience in their project. And we want to connect farmers with advisors, researchers, and policymakers to solve those issues. After the regional meetings, we also have a national meeting where all the knowledge comes together and where we want to start with thematic communities. What did we learn last years? Well, know the needs of the network and use that to design your approach. And so we learned that do it together, organize meetings together with your network, so with advisors, with researchers and policy makers, so knowledge will flow. And last, keep it simple. Sometimes a solution for a problem is just simple bringing people together, let people get to know each other, and when there's a problem, they can find each other. This is my final slide. Thank you. This was my presentation. I hope you enjoyed it, and thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Erika, again, a really interesting and inspiring presentation. I'm now going to hand over to Mark because he's been looking at another one of your Google documents, this one that you very kindly filled in around CAP networks and how they can be used for boosting knowledge exchange and also connecting in different actors. So again, thank you all for your contributions for these Google Docs. It's been really interesting and they are still available to read. So Mark, what did we find out from Google Doc C?
Great. And Sarah, you can hear and see me okay there, can you?
Absolutely, yes.
That's great, okay. So again, thanks to everybody who contributed to the Google Docs, a great resource of information for us and to tap into over the next number of months and when we're developing our AKIS strategies. So the question, or the theme that we were dealing with here in Google Document C was how can CAP networks boost knowledge exchange and connect actors? So this was a shorter document than the Google Document B. So I have just a few slides here just showing some of the highlights from those documents. So the first question dealt with CAP networks and creating an innovation enabling environment. So we had heard really good examples there from Christoph and Erika. So number of points being made here, enabling existing networks that were created during project lifetime. Such networks that are based on farmers' advisors' needs should be financed after the project ends. So that I think is a very good point about that continuity. So just when a project ends, be it an EIP or an operational group, that we need some continuity there. I guess there's opportunities there around thematic networks, as was pointed out earlier on. Separate operational functions, including support functions from control functions in public bodies. So I guess this point being made here that maybe there is it is better to separate those operational functions or operating CAP networks from the controlling bodies involved in the CAP process to improve relations with AKIS actors and create innovation and enabling environments. So I guess no different to the way we work in Teagasc. We're an advisory body. We don't have an enforcement role, and so there's a separation there of duties. So maybe extending that logic to CAP networks. Have a good running AKIS facilitator service or innovation brokers. So this is something we heard from before, is that having that facilitation or coordination type service there to support the AKIS at national level or indeed regional level. The CAP network shall include at least aspects focused on strengthening AKIS governance, exchange of knowledge, so cross visits, multi-actor focus, operational groups, strengthening innovation and dissemination of the results, boosting of digitization and improving advisory system. I think that comment probably captures all of the, nearly all of the ambitions of AKIS. And of course, there's a need for a digital networking platform. So whether is that particular to thematic groups, or maybe are there shared services that can be provided there to support networks. And from my own observation, I think the EIP service point is actually quite a good model for us to look at, and the services that are provided for there, and perhaps a national version of that could be argued for. So CAP networks support knowledge, supporting knowledge flows across borders. So this is something that has come up during our conversations this morning. I know Michael brought that up on a few, Michael Kugler brought that up on a few occasions. Coming out very, very strongly throughout the document was the language barrier. And how can we use technology to help us to overcome those barriers? Because it seemed to be a real sticking point for a lot of people. I'm only mentioning it here once, but I can assure you it appeared many, many times. So CAP networks perhaps should promote the use and test these automatic translation technologies, even if they're not perfect. And I know there was mention of the use of Google, connecting existing networks between different countries, and human interaction and discussion is very important to understand and motivate people to use that knowledge. So obviously we can't simply go away from rely entirely on digital communications or platforms. There has to be that human interaction. And we find it useful to organize study trips abroad. So that ties in very well with the point earlier on, the Belgian example, in where they organized bus trips to I think it was at the Innovation Academy that they called it. So the role of disseminating research outcomes from Horizon 2020, of course, is seen as an important part of the role of the CAP networks, and to support new thematic networks and reinforce cooperation actions in all EU member states using the RDP. Thematic events organized by EIP-AGRI are very useful. So again, maybe there are lessons to be learned from that, or that could be used at a local level. And finally then, CAP network supporting farmers and advisors to engage with innovation and available knowledge. So public research organizations and private farmers and advisors could work together to improve testing systems and other ways validate available knowledge. So I guess this could be almost like piloting or applied research projects. Establish a subgroup on innovation at national level, I guess again in a more coordination function, and dissemination and creation of connections between operation groups and innovation projects. I think that's going to be a very important one too, so that we can add to the value that's been generated from each of the operational groups across the whole of the EU. Dissemination of Horizon Europe projects and the creation of new connections of actors participating in them. So there's a job of work there to be done of connecting the expertise and experience from Horizon projects across Europe. And then stronger connections between Horizon 2020 national contact points and NRNs. Maybe we could do more work there to forge stronger linkages between NRNs, or what will be known as CAP networks in the future. And then field trips to other member states, we've mentioned that already, and working on joint research projects. So farm associations, advisors and researchers. I think that's core to what operational groups are about, really, aren't they? And finally introduce criteria linked with innovation engagement when selecting the projects financed in the national RDP. And I think this is very much linked to what we're going to be talking about tomorrow, about linking research with dissemination and practice implementation. So that is the last of the slides there on the Google Doc-C. So I think we shall move to question time. I think, Sarah, is that right?
Yes, absolutely. So we've had some interesting questions come in. So if I could ask Erica and Christoph and Inge to unmute themselves, ready for pouncing on the answers, that would be fantastic. And Mark, what have we spotted that we'd like them to have a look at?
Okay, so we have a question here for Christoph in relation to the regional structures there. If you can hear me okay, Christoph. So the question is, how are the 16 regional agricultural advisory centres and agricultural centres, are they connected? So the various different nodes that you showed on the map. The question here continues, do they meet several times a year, or are they involved in design, and are they involved in the design of the next common agricultural policy? I guess the CAP strategy there.
Yes, thank you very much for that question. At the beginning, I was a bit afraid because I saw 216 units. So, so it was a mistake, happily.
Yes.
So yes, that's true. We've got 16 regional units and one center. And so we are 17 units. And yeah, for sure, it's impossible to organize meetings of such a group of people, and because we employ, as remember Minister Kamiński said, we've got almost 3,000 private advisors and public advisors, and out of this 2,500 these are public advisors. So it's a huge group of people. I mean, accredited advisors who pass trainings and exams. So certainly it's not possible to meet in the whole group time, even using such advanced digital tools as Zoom. So usually we've got, there are meetings organized by our ministry for the directors, representatives of the units every month or every 2 months. And there are thematic meetings, of course, organized country in different aspects. During the meetings, you know, we exchange information, and certainly on the level of directors, the policies set and the key issues are discussed and developed. I mean, Agricultural Advisory Center in Brwinów, we meet at least once with all of the advisors because they need to pass trainings every year. So at least once a year they visit us and for a training. So we have some orientation in this group of people, but yeah, to coordinate it's not easy, and to meet with all of the people is not easy. But I think when the directors or representatives are present every month, it's I think it's enough. But to tell the truth, as also Minister Kamiński said, that we've got a pretty well system in Poland, theoretically as a system, but we lack some developments in practice. It's always, you know, as I think it should be improved to be better, you know, in real life, in practice. So that's the answer, I think, for this question. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much, Christoph. Inge, we have a number of questions here following on from your presentation, linking to the transition from FAS through to AKIS. So people looking for maybe a little bit more detail on that relationship or that transition, but also will funding be shifted, and will they be integrated? So I guess that, I suppose looking for some guidance on that transition. How can we can make those steps to an AKIS scenario?
Yes. Maybe if I read the questions, I should start with explaining what the abbreviation FAS means and what is funded under rural development. So FAS stands for Farm Advisory System. So it was a separate system, not integrated with the rest of the AKIS. And it was left over to the member states to see how they organized it. There were a number of minimum criteria, and more than half of the countries just used their national resources and services to fulfill that obligation. So they sent a list to the Commission saying, these are our services who will be certified for you and are ready, if a farmer asks advice, to give this advice. So it's an obligation for member states with a specific set of criteria. Now, apart from that, we have under rural development in the current period a measure supporting advice. And this measure is broader. So there you get the funding. This is the way to get funding. The criteria are not exactly the same as the ones for this FAS obligation. And they are called Farm Advisory Services. So it's both an S, so it's maybe a bit confusing, but the funding is under rural development. We call it Measure 2, and it has other conditions. Now, what is the future? The future is that there is no obligation to have a separate FAS system anymore. We have an obligation to have a system of advisors, of advisory services. So if we say transition, we just mean how are you going to build your future now that we've taken away this obligation. We of course expect still there is an obligation to have advice in place, but it's up to you how to organize it. We don't have these certification specific criteria anymore, not for the FAS, nor for measure 2 for the funding. So it's up to you to decide how to organize this. And then, of course, now we can give some advice about how to do it. We would appreciate that if you want to integrate this in AKIS, that it is as open as possible, that new advisors can come in. For instance, for digital, the old criteria that we had was 3 years of experience. How many advisors have 3 years of experience on digital? So we have to be open and maybe leave out this whole idea of certification and be a bit more open. So from our side, in the EU regulation, there is no obligation for certification at all. And we suppose that there will be, and we see registers coming. The Netherlands tomorrow will talk about a privately organized, registered even, not managed by the managing authority directly, that would fulfill the obligation. The only thing what we will do is look whether your advisors are integrated in the AKIS. And I already showed, I think twice even, this result indicator 2, with which we will see if you have interventions that help to integrate your advisors into the FAS. But we don't put from our side criteria. The only thing that we would like to see is that they are well trained. But even that is not in the regulation, but I think this is completely obvious if you read Article 13.2, which says that advisors should be capable of giving advice on economic, environmental and social issues and be up to date with science and technology. Well, it's clear, you need to train your advisors in one way or the other. You have to bring this knowledge and make them more competent. So I think you cannot avoid some kind of almost obligatory training, but for the rest, I think criteria like we had in the past on minimum capacity of the body, that one body could cover all the fields of cross-compliance, those things we all left behind. So it's a very free for you to see how to best develop it. You can make use of your old certified systems, but we would advise you to encompass, that's the principle of AKIS, all advisors into your AKIS system. That's what Article 13.1 says. So not sure if now maybe I have to reread the question if I clarified everything what was asked.
Yeah, I think I think you've covered that very well, Inge. I think that transition or that freedom at a national level. I think it's important, obviously, that there's good engagement with the advisory services during developing that plan. Could I ask, Inge, there's a question in relation to the interaction between AKIS and leader companies, and how do you see linkages there with the local leader companies or leader actions, or how do you see that relationship there? There's because you mentioned about the social dimensions of the AKIS in your earlier presentation.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. I think the leader groups are definitely part of the AKIS, and I think we already have a few examples where they were almost the brokers to set up some operational groups, and we're very open to that. I mean, we see that operational groups are a success, and whoever puts them or helps to put them in place is our friend. So in that sense, and in particular on social issues, as you say, I think maybe leader groups can do very interesting things to bring certain people together. They know the territory or the local conditions, because they have this obligation to have a balanced representation in their group. They have to make a strategy, so they have to prepare this, look at the needs, etc. So I think in particular on social issues, they could have an important role, but we would definitely not exclude any other way of covering social issues. For instance, Wim Keulemans, who you saw yesterday, he didn't say this in detail, but I was in the administration at the moment that they started. And in fact, the way they got really moving on was by profiting from demonstration actions funded by rural development, by Measure 1, in fact. And they started with a first project with 3 farmers wanting to work with handicapped people on the farm, social care farming. Then it worked well. They got a second one with, I think, 30 farms or so. And eventually it evolved now in Flanders into our social health system, in fact, and 800 farmers are really working with handicapped people, social or physically handicapped people on the farm, and they are assisted by people from social health services to help them how to work with these people, etc. So this has now even gone out of the agriculture sphere. It's gone into the social health sphere. But just to give an example that it's not only lead, it could be anything, but social is definitely something we want to be covered. And also in our result indicators, there are fishes for that. You will see that our result indicator 1 covers also explicitly the social aspect.
Thank you, Inge. And we will have to leave the questions there because time is running out. So I'm going to hand back to Sarah, but thanks again to all of our panelists for their excellent contribution.
Yes, indeed. Thank you, Mark. Again, a really interesting and inspiring session. So thank you to all of you for your contributions. What we're going to do now is send you all off on some more blind dates, which is always very exciting. So we're going to give you, again, 5 minutes in your groups. And this time we would like you to talk about how would you like to, or how are you promoting innovation and knowledge flows in your country or in your region. So again, these are very much about being a catalyst for further conversation. So away you go to your blind date rooms. Brilliant. I'm very excited to see that most of us are a little bit late back from that one. So I'm hoping that meant the conversations were incredibly useful. So we only have about 25 minutes left together today. So it won't surprise you to know that it is time, once again, to flex those fingers and get yourself ready for our latest poll. So this one, we are looking very much at where you are with strengthening your CAP network, and also looking at how you're driving knowledge flows and innovation through that. So we'll have a look at the first poll, which might also be associated with our broader AKIS family. So which of these is the AKIS family motto from the AKISs that originated in Scotland? Which may or may not be related to our Scottish participant. Apparently in Strathclyde, Britain, people of the ancient Scottish-English borders have the surname AKIS. And it's been recorded as early as 1384 in North Beswick. We're going for one pure tree, 2 good legs, or 3 strong advisors. I'm hoping very much it's the last one, but I'm not sure that's the case. But I admire the people that have gone for that. So I'm obviously very excited that AKIS originated in Scotland. And I'm also very excited that it's still alive today, some nearly 700 years later. Thank you, Alistair. I'll take that as a compliment. One pure tree or two good legs? Well, I'm excited to tell you that the right answer is one pure tree. So that's 38% of you got that right. And I'm now thinking of our AKIS family as a massive oak with its branches crossing the whole of Europe. So well done to you, those of you that got that one right. And now we'll move on to question 2. So how well do you feel you will be able to effectively share results from the work of the operational groups in your country or region? Like, it's going to be really easy. You do it already or have already set up all the processes that you need to make it happen. Like, okay, we have this information but need to put in place the interventions to share more effectively. Well, actually quite difficult because the outcomes from our operational groups are not easy to put into practice. And we're not really disseminating the information quite yet. So let a few more of you vote. That's about half of you now. So many of you are on the okay level. It's like you have the information you need. So that's good. Oh, there we go. Yes, so 52% of you have the information, but need to put in place the interventions to share more effectively. So you've taken that first step. You've got that information available to you. Now it's more about dissemination. Fantastic, that's really useful. Question 3. Do you feel you have or have now been inspired to develop the tools you need to enable your CAP network to strengthen innovation? So yes, I feel confident we can do this. I think we have some of the tools but need to develop more. Or not really, this is more difficult than you thought, so you still have quite a lot to do. But I'm getting the sense with several of these polls that you're all definitely a long way down that journey, but still have a little bit more to do. Let's see how we're going with that. Yeah, over half of you have voted now, with most of you saying that you have some of the tools, but you do need to develop a few more. So hopefully today and also tomorrow as well, there'll be some more tools discussed that will help you build those into your AKIS strategy. Okay, we have one more question. How important will the role of your CAP networks be in supporting the integration of advisors in the AKIS into the future? Like, not very important, advisors should manage this themselves. Important, we will provide training, materials, knowledge and contacts from across the border to make them more competent. Or extremely important, the CAP network will assume a coordinating role in the AKIS, and advisors will be well represented at a high level in the AKIS coordinating body, deciding on a variety of concrete actions. We can see with this one already, it's very close between important and extremely important. So the vast majority of you seeing that the CAP networks have a really important role in that advisor integration, which is good to know. And again, I hope today particularly has given you some inspiring examples of how to take the next step with that advisor integration and strengthening of your CAP network. So over half of you have voted again, thank you very much. And you can see the results there. Thank you. And we're looking at ways now that we can get all of those results from all of our polls brought together and then present them to you, because I think it's useful for everyone to see sort of, you know, where everyone else is in the process of their AKIS strategy development. So for the last sort of maybe 10 minutes or so, we'd really like to get some feedback from all of you. So please feel free to use the chat. Please also feel free to use the raise hand function so we know that you would like to contribute something. And I'd just like to ask you a few questions about your experiences today and how you found the presentations and the seminar. So I think possibly the first one is it would be great if you could share with us what you learnt today, what the key kind of learnings were for you throughout all of the information that's been provided, whether that's the presentations or whether that's something from the Google Docs that you'd all contributed to and Mark very effectively fed back on. So anything you like, and I say, please do raise your hand as well, because then we can always, we can unmute you and you can share with us. And it would also be great to hear kind of what you're taking home, even though you're already home, but what you would be taking back into the office with you. Those kind of key learnings, those things which have been really important for you today that you have found most useful. So I'm going to ask a bit of help from Mark again to see if he can spot anything that's coming up, because I know people are also private messaging as well as messaging on the general chat. And I had a very interesting discussion in my blind date, because I had Inge with me, which is always a pleasure. And we were talking a little bit about the connections between an AKIS strategy and the LEADER program, which for me was very interesting indeed.
Hi, Sarah. Yeah, we had a good discussion in our breakout group there. I think there was general consensus that people are enjoying the format of the event, and that people have the opportunity to ask their questions and so forth. Of course, we'd all love a little more extra time to be able to answer the questions or to spend that time with the experts. But I hope everybody's getting something from it. I guess, I mean, for me, the overall role of the innovation broker is becoming abundantly clear. That it's so important to have those connecting people, and that role maybe before now hasn't always been realized, the importance of it and the importance of funding it as well, importantly. So I think the operational groups is a great stepping stone for that. So I think a lot of people are maybe wondering in their minds about this future AKIS, but I think we just need to look at operational groups and look how successful they are in general, and to build on that. I think that's a good starting point. So lots of comments coming in here about the diversity of national situations from Pascal Barret there, and the work that lies ahead for ministries. I think it's fair to say that you know, that's what we're here for. This community is here to try and give guidance and support to ministries to try and develop a strategy that fits with their own situation.
I think that's reflected there as well by Martin Mies from Germany, saying Europe is a big, beautiful and very diverse place, and policies need to reflect the regional differences. But also it's amazing that we're together on this, and thanks to the EIP team. So it is brilliant to bring people together. But that's one of the challenges, I guess, with agriculture, is just the immense diversity that we have across the whole of the European Union.
I think another comment that we saw earlier on was that when we're speaking about AKIS, that we can't forget to talk about the education institutions, and of course teachers as well are an important part of the AKIS conversation. So that needs to be brought to the fore. And also a lot of interest in when we started discussing the social dimensions of farming or rural living, and that's the important role that CAP networks have to play in that. And I saw some interesting commentary there about how funding, EIP funding, can be, Inge mentioned there how EIP funding can be combined with leader funding to achieve a general goal for a particular area or for parts of a region. So it's great to see all of those ideas coming to the fore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I noticed Beatrice from Romania has said lots of interesting and useful information today, a lot to learn and also to apply. And I'm hoping that that will be one of the useful things that comes out of this seminar is not just learning information, but actually being able to apply some of that learning through the AKIS strategies. And yeah, I've noticed also a few comments about how we are missing getting together, which is true. We are missing it, but please do remember to connect up using the app and using the participants' email list as well, so that you can continue the conversations just as you would over coffee or at the bar, depending on your preference. So please do carry on with those. And I noticed we've had a few comments about AKIS being, which are reflected in the presentations, I think, about AKIS being a bridge that will bring lots of different stakeholders and lots of different actors together, which for me is a particularly exciting part of the AKIS. And I think I've been experienced in some of the projects which have already presented today with a myriad of stakeholders involved. Brilliant. Keep those comments coming in, because that's really interesting to see all of the kind of the useful things that you've discovered or you've learnt or have identified in our time together today. Yeah, and as Alistair says, there is much more we could be talking about with some hefty key drivers that are common to us all, particularly climate obligations. And these two things do need to be looked at through this lens and to brainstorm how we can create the conditions for AKIS to affect real change. And I guess through everyone's AKIS strategies, that's the ultimate goal, is to find ways of affecting real change. So as I say, I hope with everything that people have heard today and our sessions tomorrow as well, that will not only inspire, but it will lead you to have useful tools that you can then apply within your own AKIS. And then we can create those systems that do affect really strong and positive change. Brilliant. So thank you very much for that. I'm now going to talk you through quickly the plan for tomorrow, which will be as equally inspirational, I hope, as today. So we are getting together. We are starting slightly earlier tomorrow. So the check-in time will be 9:10, because we are going to be starting at 9:30. So do make sure you're with us early enough to check in. We are spending the morning looking at inspiring tools and initiatives. So we have a brilliant selection of presenters who are going to be sharing with us some of those tools that they are using or are planning on using, which again, I hope will lead very strongly to types of activities that you can implement within your own AKIS. And we'll have some time together again for some questions and answers around that, and also to share our own experiences. And then after lunch, we're focusing very much on strategic plans and the interventions that we need to create to deliver those strategic plans. So again, some really inspirational speakers. It's amazing to see what's already happening and what those plans already are. And I'm looking forward so much to listening to more of those inspirational presentations tomorrow. And then in the afternoon, we will also have a far longer breakout than our blind dates have been. And within those breakout sessions, we'll have a chance to share some of the strengths and weaknesses that we've identified within our own AKIS. And also to start developing interventions together to see if we can come up with anything exciting and new and original from everything that's inspired us during the day. I rarely say this in a facilitated event, but I think we might even be finishing slightly earlier today than planned, which is very impressive. But before you go, what I would love you to do is all go to your gallery setting so you can all see each other. And then I would very much like you to all turn on your cameras. I can see some of you have. I can even see people sharing cameras, so that's fantastic. So if you're sharing your camera, then you need to wave at us, because I can see 2 people in one camera at some points. Yeah, brilliant. What I would love you all to do, so we can take a screenshot. I can see all of these cameras on now, that's brilliant. we would like to take a screenshot of you all waving goodbye and sharing the joy of our first full day of seminar at the end of day 2. So please, we'll have a wave goodbye to each other. It's been very lovely working with you all today, and I'm very excited to be working with you all again tomorrow. Do remember the early start. It's the same Zoom link, so you should be able to get in smoothly and effectively, and we can share all of the inspirational presentations around AKIS interventions tomorrow. So make the most now. In your blind dates, you've had a chance to meet people. Make the most now of a little bit of time today to find them on the EIP-AGRI app, or to find their names on the participants list so you can message each other and continue the conversations through the evening and through tomorrow morning. And then we will see you all bright and early tomorrow at 9:30. So thank you very much. Take care, and we'll see you tomorrow.